Anybody here watching us yet? Guys, if there's anybody here, give us a shout out on the side in the chat and let us know that you're here. And we shall begin. Yeah, I'm really glad that you had the reaction that you did when I said that I wasn't a big fan of this book. So we'll get into it. Let me do an intro. Are you drinking? What are you drinking?
A Bloody Mary.
Lovely. I'm going to just pour the rest of this bottle right in there.
Delicious.
I love Sauvignon Blanc, man. It smells like pineapples.
So you and that wine is kind of like me in this book.
Where you go over it?
No, more that you didn't really care for this book, and I super don't care for white wine.
Oh, okay. That's fair. All right, let me do the intro. 2 viewers we've got. All right, what's up, guys?
What up?
All right. This is Unspoiled, covering Dune by Frank Herbert. In this book, Natasha has a terrible purpose. Finishing it. Welcome to Unspoiled. Okay, welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Natasha.
And I'm Liz.
What's up, Liz?
What up?
Your first time co-hosting with me since Broad Defense in the olden days.
In the olden days where I just bitched about my coworkers.
It was Broadcast, not Broad Defense. Broad Defense is the new thing. You bitched about your coworkers in that? I don't even remember that.
That's the one thing I remember.
Oh, good. We have 2 people here. Ash Fantastic and David Hunt. What's up, David? I know you. Ash, I don't know you, but welcome.
Hello.
So yeah, this book, you were super excited when I said I needed a co-host for it. You were like bad about it. You were the only person who was bad about it. And you know, you had to reschedule because you weren't able to make it on the day we originally were going to record, which wound up being a fucking godsend because this book is so much denser than I thought. And I was never going to be able to finish it in time. I don't know what I would have done. So thank you for that.
I mean, were you going to read the appendix? Because the appendix is maybe the best part.
I did not read the appendix. No, I did the sorry, I'm turning on the lights behind me so that once it gets dark, there will be some light in here. I did the audiobook finally, and they don't read the appendix, I guess. But yeah, so what's in the appendix? What did I miss?
Like literally the history of the universe, the history of the Fremen, because the book sets itself up as like, if you're reading the actual book, it's set up as being dictated by the Princess Irulan, who so here's some background on my knowledge of the Dune universe. Not only have I read Dune, I've read Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, and God Emperor. Well, I kind of read God Emperor of Dune, but I just couldn't. I mean, there's only so much like whining of Atreides I can handle, and this was just. I mean, so can I spoil the viewers with like the rest of the story? Because
that's a good question. I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure how many people like read this for the first time and are listening, or you know what I mean? Like how many people are going to keep reading. But you can give your overall like general knowledge of the universe from that, I think, not just like character specific events, probably.
Okay, fair. Because some super weird shit happens, like, and then weirder shit happens, and then even weirder shit happens. And you kind of get to the point where you're just like, you know what? No. Okay? No. Someone turns into a worm. Like, it's just, so it's like a worm person. And
okay.
Oh, yeah. There's that, like, these guys make this like thing called a Gola, which is like a clone of the like a guy who died, and then he like keeps coming back. So there's like new Golas of this one dude, and like they keep trying to train him to like kill like other people. And I'm trying not to spoil, but also like give you like an idea of like the like bullshitty, like the super crazy shit that happens. Like someone becomes possessed with one of their ancestors and becomes an abomination, and it's just
Okay, so that lines up because I have been told read Dune, don't read the rest. Is generally the advice that I have gotten from people from the internet.
So but I've also watched all the movies, like every single movie made on this. And here's my advice. Watch the one with what's Kyle MacLachlan in it once, because it's horrible, but it's amazing horrible. And then
that's what I hear also. Okay.
Watch the Sci-Fi did a mini series of it in like the early 2000s, and they did Dune, and then they did a combination of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, and those are both excellent. I mean, they're
okay.
You know, there's only so much you can do with the subject material, but like, and the fashion is really cool, and I mean, the acting is sort of like, but they've got some like big names, like William Hurt's in it, and Julie Cox, who, by the way, Julie Cox, who played the 6-year-old in Kindergarten Cop, who was messing with her suspenders, like she's like a grown-up actress now, and plays the Princess Irulan.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then let's get it. When did you first read this book? When was your first exposure to this?
Oh God, I was like 10, I think. 10 or 11.
Okay. So you're 10 years old and you're starting this out. I don't understand you as a human being. That's pretty much where I am with that.
It's got so much detail in it though. Like I loved hearing like all the details about how stuff was built and like the shield fighting and the still suit, and you gotta like there's the straw and like all the crap in it, and oh yeah, I love that crap.
Okay. Well, also, will you enlighten the listeners as to what your line of work is?
Oh, yeah, I'm a scientist. I have a degree in physics and astronomy, and I have a master's degree in geology. So
yeah, so I think that's the disconnect for me, where I really like the idea of all of this, but I don't really need this detail. I don't really care about it. And apparently he like got the idea for this novel after visiting some dunes in California that were like being worn away, and they were putting some they're called poverty grasses in place to hold the sand in place, and it got him thinking about like the implications of, you know, something like that on the ecosystem, and that just like fueled his research into other types of ecology, which then spawned this like whole alternate universe type deal that rested very heavily on that kind of research and stuff. So that makes sense now.
Isn't it fascinating how they're like trying to like repopulate the planet, and they have all this water like stored away, and like the big secret is the worms make the spice, but like they don't want anybody to know because the spice mass is like the baby worms, and yeah. Anyway.
The thing for me was throughout this that they're like, well, we can just make this planet a water-rich planet, and I'm like, you can't do that. No, you really can't. Just move to a different planet, get out, and leave this planet to be the desert planet that it's clearly just going to be, because you're going to kill the worms. What do you think is going to happen? Right. But that never seems to like come up. Nobody seems to like have that problem with the plan, the idea of it.
So actually that does come up in the later books and it's a big deal. And as they start changing the ecology of the planet, and like, yeah, I'm not going to spoil anymore, but like that becomes a thing.
Because that's like all I could think about the whole time was they're wanting to make this into a fertile, water-rich planet. And I'm like, the point of this planet's value is the spice. And the spice we find out comes from the worms. And you kill the worms and that's the end. What are you doing? And nobody seems to bring that up. So at least it comes up later. But it pisses me the fuck off that it doesn't come up within this book. So I'm going to do a really quick summary of the plot here. Paul Atreides, can we talk about the fact that this guy uses all kinds of different languages to create new words for everything, but his two main protagonists are fucking named Paul and Jessica?
And Paul is a whiny fucking bitch.
Paul is the worst.
And he, as the books go on, he becomes an even whinier bitch.
I just like, come get some names that are like anything that Paul and Jessica. And Paul is the son of Duke Leto, and Duke Leto is kind of a beloved badass. And he is offered a spot on, how do they pronounce it?
Arrakis.
Arrakis, right. Arrakis which is a really coveted position, but he is very aware that it's probably a trap, but he does it anyway because you kind of like have to. And he thinks that, maybe it is a trap, but maybe I'll like be able to get away with it anyway. Spoiler, he doesn't. And there is a person who named Dr. Huey.
Dr. Huey.
And he betrays them because the Baron, who is part of the Harkonnen house, he promises him that he has his wife and he'll give her back, which of course is bullshit. And he winds up just killing Huey for his trouble. And Huey manages in the very last moments before like the shit really hits the fan, he gives a false tooth to the Duke to like spray some poison gas out of it into the face of the Baron. And the Duke inexplicably uses this at a moment that it absolutely wouldn't work. And yet, as he's dying, seems to believe that he did it. Like he really thinks he did kill the Baron, which was a weird moment where I was like, why would you think that? He's very far away.
But he does kill the Baron's mentat.
Right. Piter
de Vries. And by the way, the Baron's name is Baron Vladimir Harkonnen because
I didn't realize his name was Vladimir.
Yeah, we need to talk a whole lot about the Baron and how much we got to talk about that.
So Paul and his mom escape because Dr. Huey is feeling so guilty over his betrayal that he figures out a way to at least save the two of them. And they disappear into a sandstorm and everybody thinks that they're dead, but they are not. And they wind up getting pretty much adopted by a group of Fremen who are living in an area of the desert that everyone thinks is unpopulated because they don't believe that human habitation is possible there. And Paul is part Bene Gesserit because of his mother's training him in ways that are technically supposed to only be for women. Bene Gesserit is a women's only cult, for lack of a better word. Religion, I guess.
Political cult.
Okay. And so he has these powers and everybody seems to recognize it, except that like at the end you find out that they kind of like the powers that everybody's recognizing as being portents of him being a messiah figure were planted by the Bene Gesserit as like a method of controlling people, because they know that their own Bene Gesserit people will be able to fulfill any number of these weird prophecies if they're sent out amongst the more, what's the word? What is it when you have like a kind of good old wives' tales and you believe in them?
So the Bene Gesserit have over millennia planted myths and prophecies and
superstitions. That's the word I want.
In frontier communities that are usually a lot more religious based than a highly technological community. So they planted them as kind of like, if they get stuck up there, the people will think they're a goddess, or they'll have their own kind of Bene Gesserit priestesses, and they'll be accepted by the priestesses, so they can kind of keep on their main goal, which is to create this like superhuman, which apparently has to be a dude for some reason, which never made any sense to me.
Listen, this is my like main overall problem with the book. This is like The Last Samurai, but like supernatural, where some rando from the outside who has nothing to do with this, like really, and isn't part of this, comes in, does everything that they're taught better than the people who teach them, and then just takes over and starts like throwing orders around to those who have taught him. Like the end of this book where he's facing off against the Emperor, and his Bene Gesserit woman who came and visited Paul one time is in there, like
his daughter. The Emperor's daughter is the Princess Irulan.
That's his daughter. Okay.
Yeah. And the supposed author of all the books, because so when Paul marries her, like the thing that Jessica says at the end, like he won't touch her. Like she wants to bear him a son and he won't touch her. He will only sleep with Chani. So she the whole thing at the end of the book is like, well, Irulan, I hope she, I've heard she's a historian, I hope she takes solace in that. And so literally Irulan has written all the chronicles about Paul.
But I thought that the woman who comes and tests him at the beginning of the book was there also.
Yes, the Reverend Mother, which is the Emperor's truth.
Okay, that's the woman I'm thinking of, because she's trying to talk to him and he just keeps talking over her and telling her to be silent because he's like outing all there. It's a very like Poirot-esque ending where he just gets to monologue about everybody else's secret plans for like 20 minutes and everybody just sits there and lets him like tell them about themselves. And that part, like, it just felt like he came in here into this like totally the one female dominated space in this book where we have like Jessica and then a bunch of side women characters who hardly really play into the actual plot. They're just passively there for it. I thought that the Bene Gesserits were going to turn out to be something like really awesome and respected. And instead everybody throughout the books just like talks about them as if they're witches and is really derisive, or if not outright laughing at them, they believe they have power, but they're really like shitty and suspicious about it. And I was super disappointed about it.
So this book was written by a man in the 60s. So of course the awesome badass women are going to like get theirs in the end and like Paul wins and whatever. Like you knew that was going to happen. I mean, 10-year-old me didn't know that was going to happen, but 10-year-old me was dumb enough to root for like the whitey bitch Paul.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is that from the way that this is written, having Irulan's retroactive, like, oh, sorry, Melanie Linares is commenting on the side.
Yeah, I see that.
When Paul puts his right hand in the box in the first chapter, is that where Flash Gordon got the initiation rite scene? I don't know what that is.
Never watched Flash Gordon or read
sorry.
Flash Gordon. Sorry, I'm a science nerd, but my brother read comics when I was growing up, not me.
Owen would be able to answer that question.
And apparently,
but yeah, the way that it's written, where Irulan is basically talking about everything that happened in this tense, like, they came out on top. That was part of what kind of fucked me up also, is that there's no tension in anything, because I know that he comes out of all of this just fine. And I'm completely secure in that he is going to be, the big dude. There aren't any stakes for me throughout because of that, like there's a couple instances where he does these like duels to the death that just felt so drawn out, because I'm perfectly aware he's not going to die. I'm not worried about it. And if he does die, I am 100% certain they will find a way to bring him back to life. Like, that's just how this is clearly going to go, because that's what you've decided this guy is going to be.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, the series spans, I think, 4 millennia. So the last book is set 3,600 years after the third book. So
oh my God,
he does eventually die. But yeah, oh no, I'm telling you, it gets crazy. But
oh my God, I'm taking some drink of wine over here right now.
But here's the thing that yeah, I guess, he of course is not going to die. But I think the part that I really enjoyed was all the nuance of the plotting, like a feint within a feint. And the Bene Gesserit, while they don't win in the end, they say some of the badassest lines like ever. Like,
yeah, that's what got my hopes up. That's kind of what I'm resentful of. Yeah, they get all the good lines and then they still get fucking punked. Which I'm just like, I'm just bitter about it. That's all. I don't disagree with you about their lines. They're, the fear is the mind killer whole monologue, and I will let it flow over me and through me. I was like, that was pretty solid. I liked it.
Yeah, that's my like pre-giving an academic talk. Pump myself up. I shall not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Yeah. But I'm lucky I'm already married at this point.
So he gets adopted by these guys. He gets, all of this power, and then he winds up, getting revenge and taking down the emperor, marrying the emperor's daughter, and becoming the emperor himself. And the whole time that he's doing this, he's like, I really need to be careful, because this could turn into something really, really ugly, because they're going to believe in me to such a degree that they'll be able to fight this holy war. And at the end, he realizes, I've gone so far that whether or not I'm alive is irrelevant. They'll still fight this war
so
without me.
And yeah, that's why the second book is called Dune Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
And the war is called the Jihad. I don't know. Frank Herbert seems to really like Arab culture a lot, but not really understand anything about how the religion of Islam works. Like, that's not what jihad means, dude.
Yeah, it's a weird, combination of things that he does with including Arab culture and stuff. And that was also kind of like in the audiobook, the narrator occasionally gives characters a bit of an accent, but he does it really inconsistently. Have you listened to the audiobook?
No. I have my copy, my dog-eared paperback copy that is my beloved copy that I will just reread. And
okay. This is the copy that I bought on Amazon that came to me. It was used, but it came to me and the cover like fell off immediately. And
yeah, mine's even older than that. I think mine's from like the 70s.
You still have the same one. I don't have the same anything.
Yeah. I'm a hoarder.
I moved so much and had like bad breakups and, you know, all this stuff. So I have hardly any of the possessions that I had when I was a kid. Basically, almost all of it's gone, which is a shame. But okay. So first of all, Paul coming in to the Bene Gesserits and kind of like totally scooping them for being able to do all of the power that he can do everything. And then he drinks that water of life. And yeah, he manages to like get even more power.
Well, but here's the thing. He locks into this whole Messiah thing. Like everyone before him had died. And he's just like such a like, I can do this because I'm the awesomest. And then like, you should have died, dumbass. And like the first thing he sees when he wakes up, which is not his wife, but Cheney, who's like, fuck you, dumbass.
Yeah, I didn't understand because, okay. And I mean, this is partially the thing. It's in like Greek myths because part of this whole book is Paul constantly fighting against his quote, terrible purpose, which I don't know how many times that phrase is in this book, but I got real tired of it. And he is railing against it while at the same time determined to do everything he can to stay on top always. And I'm just like, how do you not see that that's what happens? Like that's what you're doing is leading you in that. Of course it is. You could just settle down with Shaney and your kid and just like have a chill life, you know, but he decides that he's going to be the general and lead everybody out into the, you chose to do that, dude. And then he has the fucking gall to have this sinking feeling at the end of the book as he realizes that, oh, it's out of my hands now. Fucking duh. Like, you are supposed to be super intelligent. You're supposed to be able to see all of these different potential outcomes. How did you not see that doing any of the things that you are, I'm sorry.
Well, but here's the thing, like that their family's been feuding with the Harkonnen for like generations. And his father, Leto, is like, this is stupid. We need to like, but the Baron's like, I'm going to use this to my advantage. And so all Paul sees, because, you know, he watches his father. Well, he doesn't watch his father, but his father is killed. And then all he wants to do is get revenge. And so the whole book, he like spends like, you know, developing his skills and like, okay, like pause about the Fedaykin because like the Death Soldiers are awesome. Like, okay, you're like a super badass Fremen like spice fighter who like has his like Kryze knife. And now I'm going to teach you how to like disappear and like use the voice and stuff. Like, so he's got his army that's more powerful than the Emperor's Sardaukar, and the Emperor doesn't know that. And anyway, so that's it. That delights my nerd fantasies in many ways. But anywho, he spends all this time trying to defeat the Baron, and then, you know, I have this terrible purpose, but I also like have man feelings about my dad dying, and then all of a sudden, like, I win, but that thing that I was trying not to have happened because all I wanted to do was get revenge.
Yeah. Like, I guess.
Don't be a whiny bitch, Paul.
He's such a drag. And like, something happens to him after he drinks that water because there are multiple people towards the end of this book where after battles and stuff, he's like, oh, we didn't lose too many Thopters. And they're like, lots of human fucking beings died though, but cool of you to notice. More than one person points out that his father was more concerned with actual people and kindliness. And he is not that dude.
He's his grandfather, not his father.
Yeah. And I felt like that didn't happen until after the water. I felt like he cries about killing that Fremen when they first encounter him. So it felt like kind of an abrupt change. And is it like, this probably maybe is a spoiler, but is it because of the water?
Yeah, I think
the
water gives him like eternal consciousness. So like that's why they called his mother an abomination, because she drank the water with Alia while she was pregnant with Alia, and then Alia knows all of her memories and all the memories of all the Bene Gesserit, and they all put all their memories in like the consciousness. So that's why that Reverend Mother, the old Fremen Reverend Mother, was passing them all to Jessica, but Alia got them all too. So they call it preborn. And the Bene Gesserit know this, and it's bad. And so Paul also, like as a dude, he's not preborn, but like now he knows all the things. And so since he knows all the things, I feel that would probably make you into like a sociopath.
If he knows all the things, don't all the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mothers know all the things?
Yeah, but they're women.
So
they're not whiny bitches.
He can't, so he has the same power they do, but he just cannot handle it.
Well, and also he can go the one place where they can't go. That's what they all talk about. I don't really know what this place is. They don't really go into what this place is.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that whole thing.
And so he can go to the place where they can't go. And so they were breeding people to this purpose. And Lady Jessica, instead of having a daughter, had a son. And so the daughter was supposed to be bred with Fade Rautha, who is Baron Harkonnen's nephew. And then their kid should have been the Kwisatz Haderach. But that's why Irulan was trying to get at Paul for all that time, because the Bene Gesserit, because Irulan's also Bene Gesserit, and the Bene Gesserit were trying to, like, you know, what's the word? Like cost control, like clean up their mess. Like
okay.
What's the word?
Disaster control, disaster cleanup, damage control.
Damage control. There we go. They're trying to damage control.
Okay. David's saying over here in the chat, Gurney notices the change in his attitude before he drinks the water. Okay. So maybe he was just a shitty guy, and then the water just like exacerbated that in some way.
Because they talk a lot in the book about how he's turning into his grandfather. Like his mother talks about his grandfather and what a dickhead he was. Like Leto the First was not Leto. What was his grandfather's name?
I don't know.
I don't remember, but he was his reference to being a tyrant. And then Paul becomes a tyrant. Yeah,
there's a moment where she is putting up because they moved to Arrakis, and she's putting up his a painting of him in the bullhead.
And
right?
And Duke Leto is like, no, that picture needs to be in the great room. She's like, oh my God, please no.
Right? I'm trying to find that section because I wanted to find out his name, but I don't see it. I'm just like, so in that respect, that is something that I liked about this book, which is that the old Duke is only ever called the old Duke. Okay.
Fair. His name must be in the appendix somewhere, right? David seems to be a knowledgeable fellow.
David's got the knowledge, yeah. The fact that Paul isn't like just this overwhelmingly benevolent force of, he's not like a Yoda, right?
No, like he's complex and kind of terrible for the people of Arrakis,
right? So in that respect, I liked it because there's not, even though everybody else is thinking of him as the Messiah, and even though he does have these actual abilities that are very real, there is really that's it. It's just his abilities that have elevated him to this point in their minds, and his actual like goals and personality and his priorities are not necessarily going to be what's good for people. So I like that.
And it's always his mother that's talking him down. Always is Jessica being like, dude, you're at a here. I need you at a here, dude.
Yeah, Jessica. So let's talk about Jessica.
Jessica should be the damn emperor.
Yeah. Like, Jessica is really interesting. And it's a terrible shame because all she ever does is sit around thinking about Paul, her son, or advising Paul,
cleaning up Paul's
or
messes.
Worrying about Paul, everything. And I don't have kids. Maybe that is exactly what you would be like as a mother of somebody who's being christened as the fucking Messiah. Maybe that's 100% what your reaction would be. Okay, I don't know.
I don't have kids either, but I feel like if you have kids, you can probably still like be other things besides the mother of kids. I feel like that's possible. I mean,
well, that's the thing though, is like you, of course you can, but like if your son is in the specific position that her son is in, it's not the same as, you know, like, but I like to think that still, yeah, you'd be able to just do
like other shit.
Live your own life. Yeah. So everything also constantly revolves around him. And I feel like I don't actually know much about her personality because all I know of her is in context of Paul.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, so her whole deal is I'm Paul's mother and Chani is Liet's daughter and Paul's lady friend and Irulan is like, you know, Emperor's daughter. It's just it's rare that the ladies get to be people, and the ones that get to be people are seriously punished for it because the Reverend Mother is awesome and super badass, and she routinely either gets told off by Paul or I think Alia tells her off too. And like Alia is awesome. Actually, Alia gets even more awesome in the later books.
Have you read Dresden Files?
No.
Okay. Alia reminds me very much of a character that comes up later, but never mind.
Alia grows up and gets more amazing.
Yeah, I mean, she's born a Reverend Mother. Like she has all of the access to the knowledge and understanding and abilities that a fully grown, tested Bene Gesserit woman would have. And yet she's 2 years old. So it's super creepy because she's walking around seeing things and saying things like an adult person. And she's a child, at least in appearance. And it's very unnerving to everybody.
Yeah. Nobody likes poor Alia.
Yeah. They call her Aaliyah in the audiobook, which I just kept thinking, and I really need no secret from you. I probably shouldn't let you know. But she is the one who finally kills the Baron.
Yes.
Which is the best thing. Like, that's the one moment where I was just like, finally, there's a girl doing things. Thank you.
Who's her grandfather, by the way?
Oh, right. Because I forgot about that whole... That's one of those revelations that gets dropped... but it's like done when Paul is still camping with his mom, and so they get very distracted very quickly by getting involved with the Fremen, and you never really get to let that like sink in.
Yeah, Jessica's dad is the Baron. Well, and let's seg into this because we need to talk about it. So Baron Vladimir Harkonnen is not just gay; he's a pedophile. Mm-hmm. And the way that the Bene Gesserit said that they got Jessica was a woman very cleverly disguised as a young boy.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
This is something that I was weirded out by, not like, obviously, being a pedophile in and of itself. I was like, oh, lovely. But the way the book just never really addresses it.
No,
that was the part that I was just like, are we never going to have any of his people that are like in charge of there? Nobody's ever going to express that this is like really gross and horrible.
Nope.
They're just gonna
Keep feeding boys.
At one point,
Yeah.
he's like talking about how there was somebody that he specifically wanted because he looked so much like Paul Atreides.
Yes.
You
Which
know, like that
is
specifically.
hella gross.
Oh my God. I was really worried Paul was going to wind up in his hands and that was going to be a thing. So thank you, book, for at least sparing me that. But at one point there is like a plot to get to him through one of these boys, and they implant something in the guy's thigh.
Oh yeah, because so Fade like tries to kill his uncle and does a sloppy job of it, and his uncle gets super pissed. And so yeah, the needle comes out of his thigh, and that old dude. So the other like fun thing about the Baron is the fact that he's so fat that he has this suit, and he just like flies around the suit. Mm-hmm. So can I just say that both movie adaptations like have this? And it's awesome. And the guys that they have playing the Baron, I don't remember the actors' names, but both of them in the Kyle MacLachlan movie and the sci-fi movie are fantastic. They do a great job.
Okay.
And I think the movies, at least the sci-fi one, I mean, it doesn't downplay it, but the slaves that they send to him aren't boys. They're just young guys. So
okay.
They make it a lot. It's still gross. Like he's still raping slaves, but they aren't children.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, sci-fi.
Yeah, and like so this is a thing that gets my goat a little bit specifically. Is the fatness being a character trait. Mm-hmm. This is something that I didn't really like grow very sensitive to until I started to gain weight and started to notice this more and more, is that fatness is shorthand for terrible person in a lot of stuff. And
so he's fat and he's queer.
Right.
Fuck that guy.
Right. Yeah. Like that's genuinely was my first impression. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And the description of him, because I was trying to piece some things together after, and the description of him on one of the sites was like, he proves to be a terrible and repulsive person. He is cruel and sadistic and and hugely fat. And that was part of the list of things that they were using to describe like his personality as being a terrible dude. And I was just like, okay, that's, I guess, how we're going to do this.
He is really one of the laziest villains in all of villainy.
It feels very cartoony.
He has no dimensions other than like his plans are really good, but they're mostly his mentats plans. So, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's the one thing, is that he's like, he at least he is able to, while we know, for example, when he catches the thing with the young boy, that he got fed that information, but he pretends that he just like figured it out so that he can keep looking like he's badass. I at least appreciate those little moments where it's like, okay, so he is smart in his way. He's not like Paul where he's got magical powers, but he knows how to keep fear going. And that is something that, for example, Cersei Lannister does not know how to do. Like, all she knows is just how to be terrible, but she doesn't know how to like continue the issue of how to keep somebody's respect while instilling fear, because you can be afraid of somebody and think that they're just a fucking moron, like Joffrey, you know? And I think Cersei went down that road a little bit. So at the very least, he is scary, but also people feel like I really do have to be careful around him because he can see things and he can tell. So I respected that.
Yeah, and he forms alliances and he plays the game very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. Ash is on the side saying, thank you for bringing up the sizeism issue, Natasha. Yeah, no problem. Like I said, it's not something that I became that aware of until it affected me because of, privilege and bubbles. And also it's not something that I really understood how pervasive it is until I started to join different groups on Facebook that would talk about it a little bit more in detail with certain things. Most recently, I covered the 4th episode of season 3 of Sherlock, where it's like a period piece, and it's treated like traditional Sherlock stories where it's, you know, set in the past. And Mycroft is 400 pounds and a constant fat joke and punchline throughout the whole episode.
It's so lazy. Come on.
It was super lazy. And like when we were talking about the episode, it was really interesting because Rashawn is very sensitive to issues of, you know, marginalized people and all of this. But when I brought up, like, I'm just not here for fat jokes, she was like, oh my God. She's like, you know, this is just something that I don't think about. And you're 100% right. But it didn't even occur to me. And I'm like, I understand. Why would it occur to you? You don't have to worry about this. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about it because he's literally like the only person in the entire series that has been talked about as being fat. Every single other person has either a normal average size body that doesn't need to be remarked on, or they're like the whip thin Fremen who are basically desiccated from no water.
Right.
So yeah.
But and no one else is queer.
Nobody else is queer. Yes, that too.
It's just the fat gay baron raping his slaves and thinking up schemes, taking over the empire, one slave at a time.
Getting stabbed with a Gom Jabbar.
Feel like Gom Jabbar, grandfather.
That was enjoyable. I like that a lot, especially because I didn't see that shit coming at all. Like, she's just, you know, pretending to be like, oh no, and then he grabs her and surprise, bitch. I'm the only gay on the planet, says Ash. Yeah, very literally. The only gay in the universe, or their solar system anyway.
I mean, well, spoiler, Alia gets like even more awesome.
Nice.
But
well,
in the grand tradition,
that does make me feel better.
In the grand tradition of Frank Herbert, like, it doesn't last, but sorry.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so so what is the name of the planetologist?
Dr. Liet Kynes.
Liet Kynes.
So Dr. Kynes, but Liet serves 2 masters.
He was my favorite character.
Oh, he's awesome.
And then he dies, and I was just super bummed about it. So this is my overall, aside from like the throwing brand new words out there and, you know, political systems that I don't know about and just dropping a bunch of shit without any context and making me figure it out. This was the biggest issue for me with this novel, which is that nobody feels real to me. I did not get invested because I didn't really, like I said, we know that Paul's going to be fine. We know that he is the Messiah, and that's all just going to happen. So there was no stakes for me there. And everything that everybody does is like motivated by the most barely sketched out desires and motivations. And then it all circles around their abilities rather than getting into like psychological issues about who people are and what they want because of the way they grew up and what they do and how they've lived. It all just came down to what they could do in terms of predicting things, how they could read people, whether they could command people. It was really hard for me to like feel like I knew about anybody in any real way. Like Kynes was when you meet him, you're in his POV as he meets Duke Leto, and he's like sizing up this guy and just being like, oh, this motherfucker. Yeah, all right, I guess I'll help you. Whatever. And then he slowly starts to come around and see like, oh, Leto actually gives a shit about people and not just about the equipment. And he realizes that there's something about Paul, but he's like kind of fighting against the superstitious aspect of the prophecy and all of that. I understood how he thought. I understood where he was as a person, as a part of this. And I cared about him because of that. And I never felt that about pretty much anyone else. Like Hawa is as close as I got to that, feeling like there was a real human element. They all just felt too inhuman. They had such abilities that, it's like, that's, I guess, the danger that you run into with having like superhuman characters. But it felt like every time we're in Paul's head and he's like, thinking about what he should do, we get like 4 paragraphs of he could see every possibility unfolding before him in 16 different directions, overlapping, each leading to a potential. I get it. Oh my God. He can see that things can happen. There are consequences to actions. Call the news. Like, I don't need to hear this every time he thinks about anything. I would like to just know who he is as a person. I don't need to hear about his ability every time. What does he want besides just not being the Messiah and causing the jihad?
So
that's like the only thing I know about what he wants.
I think this is a book written by an engineer for engineers. I should say that my favorite author growing up was Michael Crichton, and Michael Crichton does nothing with personal development. It's all about the infrastructure of the book. And I think that's the thing that appealed to me the most about Dune, was that it's a world building and it's all about the infrastructure and like the weirding ways and like the politics and things like that. And you don't, like, if you're into all that, you don't like have to care about like what they're thinking about. And as like, I can see how to a lot of people, this is like, oh my God, enough with the fucking infrastructure. I don't care anymore. And I'm like, I need more. Tell me more about it.
I think that's really what it is. Like, because like I said to you when I was texting you about like, oh, book is not my jam. I understand why people will like it. Because there are definitely things I've read that I'm like, what is the appeal here to literally anybody? This isn't one of those. This I get. It's just so distinctly not for me.
And that's
that
fair.
It's in a very special, specific way that I didn't even know was a thing. Like, because I've been looking forward to this. I've been wanting to read Dune for like 7 years. It was on my radar. Like, I really need to read that. I really need to read that. So, and I had, this book wouldn't be part of the book club this year if people hadn't voted on it. So other people apparently thought either that I would dig it, or they also just wanted to see me kind of implode over it. I don't know. Maybe I just have some really cruel listeners.
Well, I mean, at least I feel like I'm happy that I got to talk about the book with you, just to represent like the like very 5% tiny group of the population that actually enjoys this book, but totally gets why that this is not everybody's cup of tea. I would say that I would really encourage you again to watch the sci-fi adaptation of both Dune and the Children of Dune, because they do a really good job of like inserting character development in there where there really isn't. And also Paul,
okay, that's cool.
Paul is a lot less of, I mean, okay, Paul's still a whiny bitch, but it's only when he's like a 16-year-old boy. And I mean, if you're going to accurately portray a 16-year-old boy, they're going to be whiny bitches. Mm-hmm. I can say that I, as a 16-year-old girl, was a whiny bitch. So like, teenagers suck. But it develops the character a little better. And like, even people like Irulan, who in the second and third books is reduced to a one-dimensional character, which the movies like do a really good job of at least like getting motivation. I think that's honestly, that's got to be attributed to the fact that they had some really excellent actors playing these roles who are like, look, I need more than this to go with. Like, yeah, I need a motivation here. I know the book doesn't have it, but like, come on. It's kind of
like that makes me feel better.
Like Jurassic Park. Okay, Jurassic Park was one of my favorite books. I was so mad at the movie for like making these characters less wooden and not killing the old man at the end. He fucking dies at the end of the book.
Oh, I remember hearing that. Yeah.
Oh, it made me so mad.
That's right.
He shouldn't live. He should be eaten by his own creation. That's that's his lot.
That seems like that's how it should go. I agree with you. Like, I understand that they had to keep him alive for the franchise to work out, but
whatever.
But yeah, I agree with you on that.
Oh, I'm like, I was 12 when I saw that movie, and I was just so mad at the end. My dad's like, "You're getting really upset about this," and I was like, "He should die."
I'm like looking. So are you part of the Unspoiled Book Club Facebook group? I don't think you are, because you probably would have seen this. Because I posted a couple screenshots of the book, like in parts where, because in the very beginning it drops so much on you, and I just had to share these because these are the moments, guys, where I started to be like,
fuck this book.
I like, not necessarily even fuck this book, just like, what do you want from me? I don't know what this means.
It's engineering specs is what it is. That's what it is. He's giving you the engineering specs of everything. And if you've ever had the misfortune of having to read engineering specs, even I find them dry and awful. It's just, here's 17 paragraphs about what this one thing does. Okay, next on the diagram. Here's 17 paragraphs about what this one thing does. Next. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Well, this is written in such a way, like when he drops this like bomb, like not bomb, but he drops this line at the end where I think I'm supposed to have had the same reaction as the character, but I did not, because I did not even know what the fuck. So, let's see. I must have him dead and his line ended. That's the high probability, Piter said. There are certain preparations that indicate when a house is going renegade. The Duke appears to be doing none of these things. So, the Baron sighed. Get on with it, Piter. At Arakeen, Piter said, the Duke and his family will occupy the residency, lately the home of Count and Lady Fenrig. The ambassador to the smugglers, the Baron chuckled. Ambassador to what? Fade Rotha asked. Your uncle makes a joke, Piter said. He calls Count Fenrig ambassador to the smugglers, indicating the Emperor's interest in smuggling operations on Arrakis. Fade Rotha turned a puzzled stare on his uncle. Why? Don't be dense-fied, the Baron snapped. As long as the Guild remains effectively outside Imperial control, how could it be otherwise? How else could spies and assassins move about? Fade Rotha's mouth made a soundless oh. This is within like the first half of the first chapter of ever meeting the Baron.
I mean,
I've got nothing to go on with any of that. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
So he's trying to me, the wooden-headed engineer type, who actually doesn't really get along well with engineers, he's trying to say Fade is a pretty dumbass.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he has potential, but he's kind of a dumbass. It doesn't really have a mind for this, and it should be. So they talk about the smugglers a lot, actually. There's this moment where Paul's like, oh, with the smugglers, just like pay them their bribes and then book it to the, put it on the books, pay the taxes on it and book it to the crown, like cost of doing business. But the smugglers, the International Spacing Guild controls all the spice. So the smugglers keep the Spacing Guild's satellites out of their skies by bribing them. So all of those smugglers are bribing the Spacing Guild so that the Fremen can like do their like planet greening thing.
Okay. So see, now that I have all of the rest of the backstory of everything that happened, your explanation makes sense. But even if you had sat there and explained this to me when I was reading it, I don't have any of that information yet.
Right.
So why are you giving this to me now when, like, I've got nothing? And okay, so this is the other one that came up. And this one I just like straight up posted it and I wrote in all caps, are we for real right now? This is like the third chapter. With the Lady Jessica and Arrakis, the Bene Gesserit system of sowing implant legends through the Missionaria Protectiva came to its full fruition. The wisdom of seeding the known universe with a prophecy pattern for the protection of BG personnel has long been appreciated, but never have we seen a condition ut extremis with more ideal mating of a person in preparation. The prophetic legends had taken on Arrakis even to the extent of adopted labels, including Reverend Mother, Canto and Respondo, and most of the Sharia Panoplia Propheticus, and it is generally accepted now that Lady Jessica's latent abilities were grossly underestimated.
Yeah.
This is the first, like, now I barely understand what this means. After finishing the entire book, I basically get this. What are you doing? Putting this right there at the beginning where I don't even know, Missionary Protectiva hasn't even come, like, it hasn't been called that yet. I don't even know what they're talking about here.
Remember, like, this book has an appendix.
I didn't know that until I had gotten past this point because that was when you sent me a message and you were like, a book with a glossary is my kind of book. And I was like, there's a glossary.
Oh, it's not. And it's not even a fucking like Lord of the Rings style fucking appendix. And I would honestly like, if anybody read the book, I would say read the appendix first because it's all the backstory that you'll need to understand what the fuck they're talking about.
I wish that I knew that because then I would have done that. I would have been fine with doing it that way. And it probably would have helped. It's just like, to me, if that's the way that this is set up, that you need to read that first, then you put that in your book and you make that the first chapter. What are you doing having this be basically unintelligible unless you have a whole other piece of information that's separate?
Look, I can't explain my people. Okay? We're really good at designing infrastructure. We're not really good at like communicating.
It's like
because they make us take classes to communicate.
Oh God. I mean,
no, I'm serious. I've been to communications classes, like a bunch of them.
There was a, when I went to school at Carnegie Mellon, they had a special like class about basically how not to be antisocial for the IT students. And they like told them to shower at least once a week was part of the thing. Yeah. It was ugly. Like, cause I had one of my roommates was part of the IT curriculum and she went to it and she came back and was just like, and she said, God. You know, she's like, I would be offended, except that there were clearly people in that class who needed to hear that. And I was like, ooh, okay, bummer.
Okay, so the communications classes I've been to aren't take a shower. They're not everybody sees the world the same way you do. You need to get over this and learn how they see the world because no one looks at the world. Very few people look at the world through your like rigid logic structure. And that was like news to me. No, I'm serious. I was just like, what? People don't think about this? Like, why wouldn't you?
That because this is
my German that's coming out. I was like, what? Why would you not do this? It is the way.
That's like, I totally get, it's just that my logic structure is much more about like human nature and how people think. Whereas your logic structure is obviously functions in a totally different way. So yeah, I'm sitting here like, but how?
Oh, yeah. Dave's totally right. No one would have read a book that started with the dry historical appendix. So he just added it in at the end, just as like an engineer with the extra parts. Like, here's all the extra parts I had after I built this thing. Like, if you're that, they come with the thing if you need them.
Well, okay, David, I would argue with you on this in that nobody got past the first half of this book in a lot of cases because I shared in a huge group that I'm in. There's like 20,000 people. And I was joking around and I was like, so having trouble getting through this, should I just quit and watch the movie? And a bunch of people, like I think close to 80 people commented, I have been trying to read that book for 2 years. I mean, it's clearly, it works for some people, but it certainly does not work for a lot of people. So part of me is like, maybe re-release it with the appendix first for like, you know, a different crowd. It took me 2 tries. There you go.
Really?
There are a lot of people.
Only one who's read this book not once, but like, I'd say at least 10 times.
It appears so, David. I read it 30 years ago and again for the book club. Ash, Melanie, are you guys still here? How many times have you read it? Have you read it? I do have people come to the book club meetings that haven't read the book, which I always find funny.
Please, guys, watch the movie. It's like, takes way much less effort than the book, and it's real. They're fun. They're really fun.
I was going to watch the movie before I did this book club, but I didn't have time because I was reading up until like the last second. But Owen made me promise that I would watch it with him, so I'm going to be doing that maybe tonight, actually.
Maybe like because I started watching it because I actually didn't reread the book for this because I've been working really, really hard at work.
You clearly remember everything. It's fine.
Luckily, I have a photographic
You've
memory.
read this so many times.
But I started watching the sci-fi movie, and I got up to the part where they killed the Duke. And it's long too. It's a miniseries, so the Dune part is 256 minutes, and I think the Children of Dune is probably around 200 minutes. But I mean, yeah, watch the 80s one first because again, Queen wrote the soundtrack for it.
Right.
And
it's directed by David Lynch.
Yes, It's great. It's terrible, but it's great. Oh, and Sting plays Fade Rautha.
Oh, Owen told me that last night, and he was like, I kind of don't want to spoil this for you, but I just want to say the words out loud, so I'm gonna spoil it for you. And then he said it, and I was just like, what?
Yeah. And
Which
it's
I
like
guess,
the police
sure,
sting
he hardly
too.
talks, so I guess.
Oh no, he talks in this one. You're just like, you have a penis pump, dude.
Ash says, I read it first in high school and again after college and have seen the adaptations. David Lynch has kind of disowned it, but his fingerprints are all over it.
No,
yeah, David Lynch doesn't
awesome.
get to disown things.
Sorry,
that's
David
just
Lynch.
like I'm watching Twin Peaks right now. That's the patrons only podcast right now that I'm doing with Maggie. And apparently I'm in the have you watched Twin Peaks?
No, I have not. I was not allowed to watch it as a child, and I never got into it. I think I just need to. Is it on Netflix? I don't have a lot of time to watch TV, so usually when my wife and I sit on the couch and watch TV, we hate watching House Hunters because it's like a low level of like mental acuity. Like I want to turn my brain off. So
yeah, it's
really hard for me.
We watch Tiny House Hunters when we just want to be angry.
Yes. How do you people have sex? Like, how?
They're like, we have 4 kids and 2 dogs, and we just thought this would bring us closer together. Well, maybe physically, but it will literally drive a wedge between you and every member of your family and probably your pets. But sure, do this stupid fucking thing.
How do you have sex? I want to know.
How do you poop?
It's gotta be. Well, I mean, pooping is pooping, but
the poop, like when you poop, there is usually a couple rooms barrier between the bathroom and the kitchen.
True.
These fucking open into the kitchen.
I know.
No, thank you. I don't need that kind of life.
Okay, so you need to watch. There's this one Tiny House Hunters that's in upstate New York. And it's this family from California. I think the wife was from upstate New York, so they're moving back to Saratoga Springs, New York. And the realtor is a messenger from God, and she speaks for all of us. And her face, like, because that's where I'm from, upstate New York, and we do not hold it in well. So this woman, her comments are just gold. She's just like basically in no, like, I mean, she doesn't say it, but she's saying it like, you people are crazy. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you have 4 children. 4.
Yeah.
And you're in Saratoga, New York. It's not expensive to buy a house. $100,000 to buy a house for all the 4 kids.
My favorite thing is when they're like, oh, well, we just want to downsize and not spend so much money on, and then they fucking add every extra thing to their $30,000 tiny house until it's $150,000. And you're just like, you just did that.
Ashley,
what are you doing?
Ash, fantastic. I agree. How is there not a tiny house murder investigation show yet? Because there's gonna be a knifing. So every time we watch Tiny House Hunters, Beth is like, really we're never getting a tiny house. You have to promise me right now we're never getting a tiny house. Because I love watching them build it.
That's
I'm
cool.
interested in how they build it. Yeah, it's interesting to me to like, how do you engineer something to a small space? And so I get really into it. And Beth's like, we're never getting a tiny house. And I was like, no. Grad school me would have wanted one of these to live in by myself with no animals.
Exactly. Like
just
when I lived in a little flat in London, it was like the size of a tiny house, and everything was like, there were little ladders to get up to things that were stacked above each other. That's fine. One person, one human being living in your own filth at all times. Brixton.
Yeah. Okay. I lived in,
it was a fortune and I hated it.
Well, I lived in London on my old company's dollar. So I lived in a flat on Charlotte Street off of the Goode Street stop on the Northern Line. So kind of up Taunton Court Road from.
So you were in a posh area.
Yeah, and I don't want to know what it cost, but it was actually a legit 1-bedroom, 1-bath. Like they had me in like a hotel, and I was like, no, I can't live like this. And so yeah, it was like 200 square feet or something like that. But it was like I was like living in the lap of luxury. It was amazing.
Mine didn't even have heat a lot of the time, and it was fucking January. What? It was really bad. Yeah. They're axiomatically witnesses to every murder can't fill time in the show. Yeah, because they're all in the same tiny house. Well, what if it's what if it's just the owner and the house gets like burned to the ground? Just picturing like somebody being drowned by another person backing their tiny house into the pool next door. Something like really ridiculous.
I will burn this fucking place to the ground. I swear to God.
I just like, okay, so how did we get on this? What were we talking about? Oh, the movie. David Lynch. We were talking about Twin Peaks. And the Twin Peaks is the first season I thought was brilliant. The second season started out really strong. And then it dips into this like middle area that is tiny arson. Nice. Thank you, Ash. Well done. Tiny murders. I love this idea.
As soon as we get off of this, I'm going to text my wife who's at work right now and just be like, new idea for a show. Tiny arsons. Tiny murder house.
Oh, I love it so much. Okay. So the dip in the second season, it has been really tough for me to get through. And then I found out that David Lynch isn't the director for like that whole section. So while a lot of the show is like incomprehensibly weird, at least it's entertaining. And then somebody else took over that tried to like be weird for the sake of it and just didn't understand the very specific way in which
David
Lynch is weird that still manages to be really interesting and like compelling.
Yeah, you have to watch this adaptation of Dune. You have to.
I might do that tonight.
It's so unbelievably weird. But and then you have to promise me to watch the sci-fi. Like promise.
Where is that? Where can I find that?
I have the DVD, so I honestly don't know because I went out as soon as because I waited for it to come out. I was in graduate school, so I had a lot of time to watch TV then, and I waited for this thing to come out, this miniseries, and I fucking taped it every night on VHS. Like I was so excited for this thing to come out, and so when it came out on DVD, I bought it like immediately. I used my precious hard-earned grad school dollars on a whole DVD set. It was like $20. But let me do some searching to see where it is. But since it's sci-fi, I feel like it might be on Netflix.
Yeah, it might be on. You're right, because sci-fi stuff can be on there pretty frequently. Because I'm willing to watch. Like the thing about this, I'm interested in the plot. I like the general story. I like the world that he has created. It really is the style of writing that completely blocks me from getting invested in it.
And the movie completely like saves you from all the detail so when like nerds like me are watching Dune, the movie, we're like, oh, well, let me tell you about this thing and this thing and this thing. And everyone else is like, please shut up.
What was it? Oh, it was Owen was saying that George Lucas had wanted to make the movie, but he couldn't get the rights to it. So he like kind of based a bunch of Star Wars on, which I kept thinking about Star Wars throughout this, because obviously the moisture farming and the whole like terrible purpose deal. And he's secretly your uncle. But it's your father. You got a look on your face there.
I'm very happy that George Lucas did not touch this, because then he would have had Dune with like 417 million things going across the screen. And there's like
probably
Paul is wielding his Cry's knife and he does all these fun. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't.
Can you do that one more time? I didn't quite get that the first time.
No. That's it. You could just press rewind. You got it. It's saved for humanity forever. Look, I just don't like George Lucas's directing, okay? I think he writes very well. I just think he should not be allowed near a director's chair ever.
I don't like. The only reason that I wish that he had been able to was I would have loved to see that fucking train wreck, because he is really good at writing stuff that is really, really wild to sit down and watch.
Yeah.
I did.
Who would be Jar Jar? Where's the cute furry thing? Because Frank Herbert, the engineer, is not going to include anything cute. Are you going to make Alia cute? Like, probably. She's not cute. She's like evil.
Oh, you know what he would do? You know what he would do? He would make the sandworms adorable. I bet you anything. They'd be like huge and really threatening, but they'd be like Toothless the dragon, where like once you get close to them, they have these really like sweet faces, and they're like, and you can pet them and ride them, and but only if you like are really nice to them. It's not about like catching them and forcing them to do things. It's because they're super adorable.
This is a nightmare scenario.
You know exactly. You know I'm right too.
Yeah,
like,
no,
that's
I know
the
you're
thing.
right.
I got it.
The babies. There would be a baby. Remember the baby sandworms? Because that's how they make the water of life. They kill the baby sandworm. And he would have had a little pen of baby sandworms. Like, oh, let's pet the sandworms. No,
it would be milking the mother sandworms. That's what it would be. He'd turn it into like the milk. That's a really messed up thing, actually. Like that they drown the baby sandworms.
Yeah, of course it's messed up. They're Fremen. They do messed up shit. That's their whole deal. There's nothing furry in Fremen land. There's only like, you will be hard ass or else you will die.
There's tiny little jumping mice. Those are furry and adorable.
Muad'Dib.
Oh my God. Listening to the audiobook. If that's what they did, he did in the audiobook over and over again. Muad'Dib. Oh, like the poor author or narrator, like I felt bad because he must have you have to come up with a different voice for every iteration and like 10 of them in a row. And that was because we got kind of sidetracked, and I had asked you if you did the audiobook. The audiobook is really strange because there is a narrator who does voices, and then there are scenes that are full cast. And it jumps back, and I've never encountered an audiobook that does that. I'm sure there are others, but I've just never come across one. And it is really strange because the guy who voices the Baron I thought it was James Earl Jones. It turns out it is not. It's another dude with almost the exact same voice. But now that I've mentioned the Star Wars link there, I can't help but wonder if that is a little tiny bit purposeful on somebody's part. But yeah, like the Baron has this like incredibly deep, threatening voice. And then you'll jump ahead a chapter and all of a sudden the Baron has the fucking reedy narrator's voice again. And you're just like, wait, what? So I don't really, because this book is like one of the biggest, most influential sci-fi books ever. And it's kind of bizarre to me that it's not just full cast straight up.
You'd think that they would like bring the A-team for this.
Exactly, right?
Like it's one of the best-selling fantasy novels of all time.
Exactly. Yeah, I was okay, so David's saying that transition between full cast and narration was jarring. I'm glad that that's not just me thinking that, because I was just honestly, I thought I had made a mistake or done like I don't know what I thought, but I was like, wait, this isn't right. What is this? And yeah, when I checked and I asked a couple other people if they knew why they'd made that choice, and the only thing that anybody could find on it, because we like searched online and stuff, was that they wanted to give an extra like underlining power to some of the scenes that are more dramatic. And so they just had it full cast for those scenes. But I mean, if you're an audiobook narrator can't handle doing that kind of scene, then just don't have him do the narration at all. Have a different person do it.
Yeah, there's tons of voice actors and actresses out there. Like, yeah, find somebody.
So I just thought that was kind of weird. And I would be interested, like I know that you have your dog-eared copy, but I'd be interested in you listening to some parts of it, because I'm sure there are clips of the audiobook on like YouTube and stuff, and see what you think of that.
I'll have to. It might make me want to throw like my phone across the room.
It might. The ending scene, like I preferred the full cast a lot of the time, but mostly when it was the Baron. The voices for Duke Leto and his people, they all had these really weird American accents. And I'm starting to realize that it might have been British people doing American accents, and that's why they sounded so strange.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was something off about it.
Yeah, don't do that to British people.
No, don't.
Look, we shouldn't do your accents, don't do ours. It doesn't turn out well either way.
There was a part where I heard a distinct like Boston intonation, and I like stopped and like it went away, but it was like he strayed into it for a second, and I just like started laughing. So yeah. And Paul has an American accent, And his voice at the end in that ending scene where he's like going up against everybody and like, you know, he is insufferable. His voice, like they picked a really good voice actor, honestly, because I hate him. So I guess that worked. But I wish that there was a way, like, I'm like, maybe I can find this ending because it is in the very last scene and just rewind a little bit so that you can hear what I'm talking about, because it's not an audiobook that I can lend out because it's been loaned to me. Let's see. Doop doop doop. It's saying that it's playing, but I don't have any sound. Well, what the hell? Oh wait, I think I have it turned down.
For this I was trained, Father.
The Emperor took a deep breath.
You cannot stay this thing.
The Emperor straightened, standing stiffly with a look of remembered dignity.
Who will negotiate for you, kinsman?
Paul turned, saw his mother, her eyes heavy-lidded, standing with Cheney in a squad of Fedaykin guards. He crossed to them, stood looking down at Cheney.
I know the reasons. If it must be, Usul.
Paul, hearing the secret tears in her voice, touched her cheek.
My Sihaya need fear nothing. Ever.
He dropped his arm, faced his mother.
You will negotiate for me, mother, with Cheney by your side. She has wisdom and sharp eyes, and it is wisely said that no one bargains tougher than a Fremen. She will be looking through the eyes of a love for me, and with the thought of her sons to be, what they will need. Listen to her.
Jessica sensed the harsh calculation in her son, put down a shudder.
What are your instructions?
The Emperor's entire term company holdings as dowry.
Entire?
He needs to
Anyway.
be stripped. I
Wow.
want an earldom and term.
He's just got this really bland voice. That's like, I don't know. The choices that they made for that were really strange.
I'm sorry, the Cheney voice is amazing.
I understand the reasons.
What a horrible voice to do for like one of the baddest bitches in that novel. Like, come on, man. She was one
Yeah.
of the few that actually had like somewhat of a personality. Oh, P.S. The actress that plays her in the sci-fi.
Is that
Liz
thumbs
is into her.
Oh, I was about to say, like, our listeners can't see you doing the thumbs up, but
Oh, sorry. That's a big thumbs up for me.
is it that she's an amazing actress?
No, she's super hot though,
Okay.
and Czech. So she's got like a Czech accent.
Oh, okay.
She's Czech or Slovak.
but that's the
She's some-
sci-fi
she's
one.
some kind of Slavic. Yeah. She's well, and also has Owen told you who plays Cheney in the David Lynch version?
I don't think so. Who?
Sean Young.
I don't know who that is.
What?
I'm looking this up.
Crazy ass Sean Young from the 80s who like wanted to be Catwoman and played Lieutenant oh god, from Ace Ventura. The lady cop.
I never saw Ace
Turned
Ventura.
out to be Ray Finkel. Oh yeah, it's very anti-trans, but at a time in my life where I didn't know about trans people, so I thought it was hilarious.
Okay, so this is not the Sean Young that we're looking for.
No, Sean Young is a lady.
That's who I Googled. How do you spell her name?
The Irish way, Sean.
Sean. Oh, from
Yeah.
the, what do you call it? Robot movie. With the
Sean
rain
Young.
and the Chinese food. You know the one I'm
Sure.
talking about. Blade Runner.
The rain.
That's the one.
Oh. Yeah, Sean Young plays Cheney.
David Hunt says straight white 15-year-old me actually liked Paul, and that colored my opinion in the reread. But yeah, Paul can be terrible. Ash says one of the most transphobic characters ever,
Einhorn.
unfortunately.
Yes, Lois Einhorn. Yeah, I 20-year-old me thought that movie was hilarious, but yes, that movie is super transphobic.
Yeah, that was actually, I haven't seen it, but there was a recent episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine where Jake had just watched it and he was like, holds up pretty well. A little transphobic there at the end. So, that's fun. And I was like, oh, all right, noted. I appreciate that show will actually address shit like that. All right, well, I feel like there was other stuff that I wanted to mention, but so much of this is just like inside their brains, and they're like, journeying across the potential corners of the universe and understandings of things that are beyond the ken of man, that there's really no discussion to be had about that.
Yeah, I think unless we want to go into the minutia of the details of like how the still suits are designed, but
no, I'm good.
That seemed to be like nails on a chalkboard to you.
Like, honestly, the still suits were cool. That is something that I didn't really give the credit that it deserved, is the building of the religion that is completely based around water and the dependence on water. And that is a really cool idea. And I think he does it in a really organic way that feels real,
Yeah, and the worship of Shai Hulud, like bless the maker and his water, bless his coming and his going. It's something about his water for his people. Like, yeah, that's when he catches Kynes doing that. That's like a big deal. Well, for me at least. But yeah, anyway, it's really cool about the worms are the enemy, but in the end they're not. Like. Maybe the most character development ever is about the fucking worm.
Do you know what I thought actually was happening? Was that the Fremen, I predicted that the Fremen were able to like tame the worms somehow. But what I thought was happening was that the Fremen had created machines that mimicked worm movement under the sand, and that they were going out and stealing spice and fooling everybody into thinking it was a worm attack and stockpiling spice because everybody thought that it was just being eaten by worms or being taken or, whatever. And I still kind of like that idea. Still want somebody to make like a worm machine that travels under the sand in such a badass way.
But why would you make a worm machine when you could ride a fucking worm?
Because that goes under the sand. The worm, you have to like keep them up above the sand, like rolling along the top of it. But this would be like a submarine for the sand, So you could like attack other people and they wouldn't even see you coming, or they'd see you coming and they'd think you were a worm and they'd just fucking bail and leave you all the good shit.
Would you build a contraption to attach like a enclosed thing to a worm, so you could still ride the worm, but you'd be in the enclosed space?
So it's like the worm has like a little caboose attached to his butt, his worm butt.
No, it's got like a covered saddle. So you're like on the back of the worm and you're like, all right, dive, worm. And the worm's like, yeah, dive. Let's go get those.
So you're in like a little like bubble that's protected. Okay.
A protected bubble.
I could see that. That would work.
Also, one of the overarching themes of this book, before we sign off, this is one of my favorite parts about this book. And a lot of books like it, where part of the appendix talks about the war with the robots, artificial intelligence. So humans create artificial intelligence, and it very rapidly gets smarter than us, and then it tries to kill us. And this is I know everyone's going to think that I'm going to get my tinfoil hat out right now, but like this is a thing that will happen because I've seen us, right? Yeah, like you've seen how smart computers are now, and we're still smarter than them, but not for long. And so I love sci-fi novels where like this war has already happened, and so now artificial intelligence is like banned. It's forbidden. So there's a lot of this book talks about like how would technology advance when you cannot have any type of artificial intelligence or computers, like how, but you still have space travel, but how do you do that? And I think using like, this is a really unique and interesting vehicle to allow space travel without computers.
That's true, because I was noticing that there were points where I would forget about the kind of technology they had because they were still using books and writing things down instead of like typing them out. And there were a lot of things that in your average sci-fi, they would be handled in a totally different way. So I fell into thinking that these are an ancient peoples. And then all of a sudden they'd be like, they press the button for their shields. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing here. Okay, I lost track of that. So yeah, that's a really good point, is how differently because really what the book is focused on is the technology regarding like the ecosystems and making places livable. But the technology that we could like really have at the forefront of our minds, which is all like information or entertainment based, isn't part of that at all.
No.
So yeah, that's a good point.
It's forbidden. And I like, that was one of my favorite parts about the book, is how he managed to still make space travel possible, but with absolutely, they're basically medieval fighting with weapons and guns. I mean, they have laser guns and stuff like that, but like medieval fighting, but not with computerized systems at all. And because the robots have already risen up and tried to kill us.
Damn.
And we won. Will we win the real fight? Who knows?
Like I had said before that I hadn't read the appendix because I had done the audiobook, and I had the it says space travel with an exclamation point. I love that. I don't know why that delights me so much. Yeah, the appendix is long. Hello.
Oh, it's like a third of the book.
Appendices. Baklava, a heavy pastry made with date syrup. I wonder what inspired that.
My God.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things here that probably would have been helpful.
Well, it's true.
Oh, well.
David said it was clever of Herbert to get rid of all computers so that technology doesn't become dated. But I would come back at that and say he wrote that when ENIAC and what was the other? I think ENIAC, when computers were in their infancy. So unless he had access to what NASA was doing, he wouldn't have known about like the true. I mean, they would have this computer that was the size of a room that was able to do like a math equation, like just one. Like it wouldn't have even occurred to him that you could have a computer in a small enough space to like run a spaceship. Because the original NASA wasn't the original space shuttles. I mean, yeah, they were run by some computers, but most of what they did relied on the flight, the flight abilities of the astronauts. Like they all had to be pilots.
Yeah, that's true. Like, what could he have come up with? And like, it is kind of telling that, because artificial intelligence, you think robots, but a computer that just has access to some information, like books and things, he has something like that, where I'm trying to remember exactly how it's described, because Dr.
Yui has the Orange Catholic Bible.
Yeah, and he like presses the spine to open it. How does that work?
So actually, I think that book is a banned form of technology, because I think it comes up later, like, oh, you have this book, you're not supposed to have it. And he's like, oh, well, it was a keepsake of my wife's, so I kept it. But it has, it's a digital book. So
he's not supposed to have. So even that is not okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty strict, guys. Like, what's harm is a book gonna do? Can't eat your face off.
So one of my friends is a software engineer I don't think he's at Google, but he's at one of the software companies in Silicon Valley. And just talking to him about what computers are able to do with large amounts of information, like people's browsing habits on the internet, or like anything with Amazon, like what the computer comes up with is crazy. Like in the sense that like it's crazy, and like we as humans like work in a very simple correlative, like, so I'm going to we like to think linearly, and most of nature does not act linearly. It usually acts in accordance with how calculus works, but our brains don't think like that. So the computer comes up with like, oh, so all these people did all this stuff, and now we've here's all the correlations on this, and like you would never think of all these correlations. It's crazy.
So you're saying a book could eat your face off?
Yes.
David says, I'm pretty sure it was a miniature book with a magnifying device.
Oh yeah, no, David's totally right. And the pages are super thin, and so the device kind of pops it up.
Oh, that's a cool
idea. I think it was the Bible that was a banned book.
Oh, I thought that they referenced that book all the time, though. How is that banned? Like everybody Isn't that part of
Something
like the
about
Bene
it-
Gesserit training or something? I thought
Maybe I'm wrong. There's something about that book where he's not supposed to have it. Or maybe it's just a Suk doctor isn't supposed to have like a religious text or something like that. I'm not
or
sure.
maybe
but
it's just super valuable and he was like, keep your mouth shut or somebody didn't take it.
I'm sure David, who's just read the book, and I haven't read the book recently, will tell us what's up with that.
Yeah, help me out.
Or if I'm totally crazy.
All right. Well, I think that's about everything then. I really thought that there was going to be another thing that I wanted to mention, but I'm coming up short. Yeah, I kind of want to ride a sandworm.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only thing.
I want a knife that's made out of worm tooth.
Yeah, you were calling them Christ knives in the audio book. They call them Chris knife.
I think it's a Chris knife. I think, well, you know how when you read a book when you're a kid and you pronounce it a certain way, and even though it's the wrong way, and that's it forever. And so little kid me,
I surely do know. All right, guys. Well, thank you everybody in the audience there so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I wanted to give people a heads up too that I have been struggling with my schedule. I posted a video in the patrons group about this, but I am going to probably be having some people take over some of the book club episodes coming up because it is hard for me to fit everything in. And I have been going a little bit bananas. And I'm doing like 9 shows a week, and it is too much. So I'm going to I'm definitely going to be doing at least the Bag of Bones book in October because that one is not only one that got asked for specifically by my top like most generous patron, but also the 2 gentlemen from Overdue podcast are going to be joining me for that one. So I'm really excited about that. I'm not sure if they've read it before or if this will be the first time they've read it too, but I am really excited because Andrew and Craig are 2 of my faves. So they'll be here in October for that one. And David is chiming in the last. Yeah. The OC Bible is the standard religious text. I think Yui's copy was just valuable, but it didn't make that much of an impression.
All right. I'm just making it up then, which is totally possible and probable.
Well, thank you, Liz, for joining me and putting up with me shitting on a book that you really, really love.
It's okay.
I appreciate your tolerance.
It's not for everybody. Look, I have to like watch stuff like Tiny House Hunters with my wife, who I'm sitting there going, oh, let's talk about the engineering qualities of this. And she's like, oh my God, stop. And she's a doctor.
Oh God. And she's still, yeah.
Oh, she's like,
woman
please
think that would
stop.
work.
No, it's a completely different, like I can't memorize stuff for shit. And she tried to install our bathroom vanity and said that since her dad owned a plumbing shop for 30 years, that meant that she could install a bathroom vanity, and stopped after she couldn't loosen the supply lines for the faucet. It was just like, no, I quit. And I was like, okay, good. Now I can take over this and do it right.
That sounds like me. That does. I have to admit. This is not super easy, so I'm gonna quit. Thanks, but bye. Well, and yeah, thank you, Ash.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you, David, for feeding us information. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, David.
You know where to find us: Facebook.com/UnspoiledPod, Twitter at Unspoiled Show, Instagram at Unspoiled Podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Natasha Writing. Is there anything that you wanted to plug, Liz, before we go?
No, I work really hard at my job during the day, and I have no time for other things on the internet. I do have a Twitter account that's at Gate, GATECREWGIRL, Gate Crew Girl, where I tweet about pictures of my cat and Houston Texans football and occasionally Astros, but usually it's yelling about my cat.
I keep forgetting that you're also here in Texas. I always forget that.
I know. H-Town.
I need to do some kind of Texas meetup, but I am so focused right now on the Florida meetup that's going to have to wait. Which you should come to, BT Dubs, because it's going to be in Wizarding World and it'll be super fun. Anybody listening, you should come.
I try to stay away from Orlando because my my in-laws live in the Villages, which is a retirement community to the northwest of Orlando. And if I'm in Orlando, that means I have to go there. And that's where fun goes to die.
Oh, boo. You
You
can
know, it's-
lie and say that you're my employee and that I won't let you go because it's a work trip. I'd be like, no, I'm sorry. I need her too much. We're having a live show tonight. 50,000 people attending. Can't, sorry. Make this like an incredibly important event.
Yeah. Also, my brother Zach still runs his restaurant, and I want to light that place on fire. So,
Tiny arson.
in Orlando.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Light it
I'll
on
see you next
fire.
month.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see you next month with the July book is Night Circus. So I don't know who's co-hosting that one with me, but get the book and read it and join me. All right.
All right.
Bye,
Later.
guys.